Welcome to the Playbook presented by the Leaders Lab. I'm Ken Eslick, and if you're a leader or founder who wants to hire top talent, scale your business, and sell for more, you're in the right place. Each week, Onika and I bring you practical, actionable advice that you can put to work immediately to make an impact in your business today. And now, here's this week's episode. Ken Eslick here once again with Onika, and I'm excited to talk to you guys today about establishing culture and defining your leadership style. One of the biggest mistakes I see founders and leaders make is assuming culture just happens, and it doesn't. Culture is built with intention. It starts with the founder, their values, their ethics, their drive, what they tolerate, and what they don't. And over time, it's shaped by the people they bring into the organization, the standards that they mutually agree to uphold, and most importantly, what gets reinforced day to day. Culture is not what's written on the wall. It's what happens in meetings, in hard conversations, under pressure, and when no one's watching. Today, we're going to walk through my leadership philosophy, not as a theory, but as a practical framework for building a healthy, high-performance culture intentionally, not accidentally. Welcome back to the show, Onika. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Ken. I'm really excited to get going with this chat. I have some burning questions for you. So if you're ready, I'm ready to go.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So Ken, we spoke a little bit about leadership styles in that intro, and you told me in the past that one of the greatest tools that you've leveraged in building culture is defining your leadership style. Was there a specific event that led up to you framing it in that way?
Yeah, it was such a cool kind of moment in my career. We had sold our company and I had been on board with a Fortune 500 company for probably 2 or 3 years at that point. And I had just been elevated from a local kind of general manager position to a director position. And I was doing a location visit in Las Vegas. And in that particular market, the division that I oversaw was housed with another division. And unbeknownst to me, our CEO was in town visiting that other location. And I didn't think he even knew who I was. Like I had passed him in the hall a couple of times at corporate, said hello, got introduced, but the guy meets thousands of people. But he did remember who I was, and he was super gregarious and really nice. It's part of, I think, what should be in our culture is I think for the right leaders, it's almost like the higher they go, the nicer and more present they are. I don't know how they do it, but this guy was just so good at really being in the moment. And he said, "Hey, we're both here. Why don't we sit in on each other's visits?" And not in a way like he wanted to spy on what I was doing. I think he was truly interested in collaborating and, yes, showing me what he's doing, but also seeing if there were some takeaways from what I was doing. So as I sat down in his meeting with his GM and rode shotgun, I remember he pulled out this piece of paper and told the GM, "Hey, this is something I do with everybody I meet with is showing you my leadership so that you can hold me accountable to the things that I say I'm all about." Do you know what I mean? And it wasn't done it wasn't, here's a sheet of expectations. It was the opposite. It was for him as a leader, for that CEO as a leader to hold himself accountable. And he just called it my leadership style. And it had a list of very specific things that he wanted to be held responsible and also wanted them to take action on as a team. And I thought it was so cool that I implemented it that day. I stole exactly what he had. I reworded it and added some things for myself, but I initially started with his template. And now we're going to talk about my template today, but it was all based on that one meeting.
Yeah, Ken, that's really interesting. And speaking of your template, I'm really excited to get into it. But something that I've had a sneak peek into on your template is something called positive discontent. And what does that mean for you? And why is that the starting point for a great culture?
Yeah, let's break it apart. Positive is positive. So let's be positive. Let's recognize our achievements. Let's show up to work with a smile each day. I know some days are easier to do that than others, but like overall, let's be positive. Let's look to the future with positive. But discontent is a word that by itself sounds bad, right? It's never satisfied, that kind of thing. And I think there's an element to what I'm saying is that we're not going to rest on our laurels, right? That we're always like striving for more. So things are going well. We should recognize that. We should absolutely own and recognize our achievements and celebrate our achievements. And at the same time, almost, okay, what's next kind of mentality, right? I think that's important. And I want people to keep in mind that as they're establishing the culture for their company or their team, I'm not saying that what I'm saying is one size fits all. Just like our CEO, as brilliant as he was, not every single thing that he had in his leadership style is something I'm going to take on myself if it didn't resonate, right? But for me, this idea of learning and growing and continuous movement forward is what that
Yeah.
positive discontent is really all about.
Yeah, it is very interesting because it's like they are in antithesis, right? Positive and discontent. So
They are. If it's all positivity, Annika, you've got everything's happy and no one's looking at anything. And if it's all discontent, then it's no matter what you do, it's never good enough. So blending, finding that line of where that is for you.
exactly. Also feel like it only works if you genuinely care about the mission
Yeah.
and you love what you do. And that brings me to you also talk a lot about loving your work and not in the kind of toxic positivity way, but rather as a responsibility. How does that fit into the cultural expectation of things?
I think I do talk about love your work. And again, I think that's one of those things that's easier to do some days than others. But overall, if you're not happy, if you don't like where you're working, you should do the things to address it, hopefully first, so that you can like where you're at, right? Bird in hand is always important, but or move on, right? Because life is too short, right? And so you want to be surrounded by people that want to be surrounded by the same people you do, right? And be in that same environment. And that is something that I think most people, when they start a company, that's what they want, right? Like no one signed up and went, I'm joining these guys because I think I'll be moderately happy here. Usually it's their expectations are high and something got broken along the way. Sometimes leadership may have not come through on something they should have, but let's get everybody to a point where they love their work.
Absolutely. I like that it's framed as it's not just beneficial for the company, but for the individual themselves as well. But that also comes with, for the leader, I can imagine responsibility around things like fairness. Like, how do I come here and I love my work, but I don't feel like I'm being treated fairly, or there's politics and things like that. So, why is that also critical in terms of keeping fairness within your team to ensure your team is happy and scaling?
Yeah, I think the number one disruptor of a culture is having politics, secrets, gossip, and allowing for any of that stuff to exist at all. Like you have to squash that stuff out immediately. Pettiness, anybody being disrespectful to anybody else, like that just cannot exist. There has to be just a zero tolerance policy for that kind of stuff. And then on the leadership side, being I think when people aren't included in decisions, and everybody can't be included on every decision. They just can't. But
Yeah.
I think to the best of your ability, explaining the business reasons why things are happening the way they're happening. Let's say there were three people on a team and there's one promotion happening and three people want that promotion, right? Let's say
Yeah.
only one's going to get it, right? Two aren't going to get it. Weak leadership, weak culture would be to not address those difficult conversations for the two people. Strong culture, strong leadership would not only be, hey, here's why you didn't get it, but here's what you need to do to get it next time. You're a
Right.
top performer. It's why you were being considered in the first place. I don't want you to take this as I know you're disappointed, but this is one conversation of many that we're going to have in your career that's going to involve a lot of promotions. Do you know what I mean? And you didn't get this one. And how you react right now means everything, right? So what we really should be asking ourselves, if we're the individual that didn't get it, is, okay, I get it. It's fair. Maybe I agree with the decision, maybe I don't, but they were at least fair enough to share with me the business reasons and tell me what I needed to do next. I had a great career in corporate and I didn't get every promotion I wanted, but I was lucky enough to have mentors around me that did exactly what I'm talking about, which is, hey, you're on a short list now. So
Yeah.
oftentimes without that mentorship or leadership, people implode, right? It's if they don't want me for the job and they're not even good enough to tell me why I didn't get it. And all of a sudden their attitude goes south. And all of a sudden you have this person that was really close to getting to promoted to now being somebody that you're having an entirely different opinion and conversation about you.
The value of transparency in a healthy culture just, yeah, it's so vital. And with the transparency, Ken, I feel like something we've talked about just in terms of our company and at the Leaders Lab is always knowing what's expected of you and where you stand. What role does that play in a healthy culture?
It's so important. I think weak companies have weak transparency usually. And when you think about it, Onika, like poor performers actually do better in weak companies, right? Because they can hide. When there's no scoreboard, then there's no real way to measure people. And so what ends up happening is your top performers feel let down because they know they're a top performer. They're frustrated that they're not being recognized as a top performer. And weak performers level up because everybody gets thrown into this sea of ambiguity. You know what I mean? And it's really important to, at every stage of someone's development, KPIs can sometimes be dangerous if they're applied across the board the same, right? That you're treating the rookie the same way as you are the veteran. It's not like that. It's based on what you and I have talked about, Onika. Let's say you and I had a meeting, we had your performance review, and then there are certain things you want to accomplish over the next 6 months. And as your coach and as your leader, my job is to help get you there, right? Or help you get yourself there. And it's also my job to let you know if you're on track or off track with those things, right? And the more detailed and precise we can be in what those things are. And sometimes that's tough. So if it's a sales number, a little bit easier. Make this many calls, have this many sales, right? It's very quantifiable. But if it's an executive acumen thing, let's say what I wanted from you was to improve your understanding of the financial aspects of our business, and that's all new to you. And you may
Yeah.
say, how do we measure that? We might measure that by, I want you to take this class, read this book, by the end of the next quarter, be able to give me a dissertation of our current financial statements. You know what I mean? So I can still measure it. So anything that we give someone, again, we need to let them know what's expected, and we need to have measurements in place to let them know where they stand along the way. Performance reviews should never be a surprise, positively or negatively. If we're doing our job, if we're communicating what's expected, where you stand all the time, then when you get the performance review, the individual, if they're being fair, could almost write the review themselves. They don't even need the leader to do it.
That kind of brings me to the next part of what I wanted to ask you as well around something you also talk about a lot within our company is if you see a problem, expose it, help us expose it. Why does that help a team? If everyone takes on that approach and that mindset, how does it help a team have that competitive advantage?
I think it's because, first of all, as an individual, we all want to be heard, right? And everybody that we hire is smart. And so we all want to be heard. And we all, if we start developing these habits of walking by things that are important, then it starts to erode at the culture. And people on the team start seeing, oh, they're not addressing that, and it's we can't address what we can't see sometimes. You know what I mean? So you need everybody to be. What I think that statement really means is that everybody is a steward of the culture. It doesn't. Yes, the leader might establish it and might set the tone and might talk about some of these things that we're talking about today. But then
Yeah.
if you hire people that are on board with that culture, which is the only people that you should be hiring, then we all become, it's almost like having a football team and you have a head coach that's calling the plays, but then everybody's got to run the play. And if something's off, they've got to let us know so that we can adjust. So everybody is a participant in our culture. And that's what that statement is really all about.
Can you just mention you want to make sure you're attracting the people that fit your culture? What can I do as a hiring manager or leader to look for those people? What should I look for in them that reflects our culture?
I ask a lot of questions around how they're wired individually. We do behavioral assessments that we've talked about before. That won't tell you if they're a cultural fit, but it'll give you an idea if they are more prone to speak up or be quiet, that kind of thing. And I actually use this list, by the way, as I started using it as a hiring tool. We would talk about all of these points with a new hire as I made that new hire to see like how does this resonate with them, when they're telling stories about their past or their past companies, you'll get a really good idea as well as how they're wired. And I'm not saying if they came from a company with a bad culture, I wouldn't hire them because that's not their
Mhm.
fault. But I'm just curious to see how it shapes them and how they're, how, what it's going to do for them or against them moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Ken. And yeah, just back to what we were talking about, exposing those things are so essential because if some don't get exposed, people leave, turnover, that sort of thing. And on the turnover thing, something that you infamously say is turnover is almost always the leader's responsibility. Can you unpack that for me?
I think it's really important for leaders to understand that if you onboarded somebody, you believe that they were a good fit for your team, right? You don't get to absolve yourself from that on the day that you realize or that they realize that they're not a good fit for your team anymore. You don't, it's not suddenly not your responsibility. Like, whose
Yeah.
responsibility is it? And when I've expressed this sometimes to leaders that I coach, they'll say, what if the guy was or girl was stealing from us? And I'll say, yeah, still your fault. Not your fault that they stole, your fault that I'm guessing this wasn't the first time that they ever stole. And maybe you should have dug in a little bit deeper in the interview process, right? Now, this is harsh because it means that every leader is going to fail because no leader has zero turnover. There's always turnover.
Yeah.
But we need to be asking ourselves, like, what happened? Because we like them enough to say yes one day. So, was there a breakdown in the way that we interviewed and did background checks or didn't do it or whatever? Or was it a breakdown in a leadership breakdown, really, like how we onboarded them, trained them? Were they assigned
Mhm.
correctly? Did we do all the stuff we were talking about so far about did they know what was expected? Did they know where they stood? If they were falling behind, did we give them the tools and things that they needed to get ahead? If we can't look at our mistakes with a level of radical self awareness, then we don't learn from them at all. Do you know what I mean? And the problem perpetuates. And what you end up seeing, I saw this a lot in corporate America, where you'd see two offices of the same company selling the same product with the
Mhm.
same pay plans. And one of them year over year has 25% turnover and another has 10. And what's different about that? They're
Yeah.
selling the same thing. They're paying the same way, and it's all about the culture and the leadership that's unique to those locations. And until it changes, then you see it perpetuate over time. It just continues and continues.
Ken, you just mentioned sometimes the break can be in hiring, sometimes it's a little bit further down the line. Is there benefit in making sure that in the hiring process, there's not one singular person conducting that to
Yes.
ensure it's not a biased decision? What is the value in having the second opinion sort of thing?
I think it's really valuable. And I used to own a company a long time ago where I was the only decision maker. And listen, they always say two heads are better than one. And if two are better than
Yeah.
one, then three or four are great. You need to cut it off at a certain point because we're not going to get 10 people involved in a normal interview process. But having, you want the hiring manager, you probably want the founder of the company signing off, other maybe key people that they might work with,
Yeah.
and that all of those people have a voice in the process. And depending on your process, they might even be able to have a veto. So a lot of times in a hiring process, it'll be like, look, they're going to meet with four people and it needs to be four yeses, not three yeses and a no. You know what I mean? Or at
Yeah.
least for that no to be heard out. And then that team of four that interviewed that person all decide. There's a number of reasons for that. If people feel that they're not involved in the process at all and that people are just being forced into the team, then it's really hard to have anyone have any level of, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, not a little bit of accountability, but also like ownership. Do you know what I mean?
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, buy in. Because if you interview someone and you say, I absolutely love this person, I think they're going to do great. I hope they're on my team, either as a teammate or maybe I'm going to lead them,
Yeah.
then you're invested. You're invested and you're going to want the best outcome for them. If I just serve someone up to you that you've never met, then it's a little bit more, okay, who, even with the best of intentions, there's going to be a natural human reaction of, I don't know this person. Ken says they're
Yeah.
good, so they're probably decent, but I got to make my own decision, right? I don't know who they are. And so I think getting buy-in in particular before someone starts is critical. So you want that feedback, but you also want that buy-in. Stay with us. We'll be right back after these messages. You know, most leaders don't build organizations, they build cages, and you can't grow if everything depends on you. Whether you're a founder scaling your company or a corporate leader running a high performance team, growth starts with people. And that's why the first pillar at the Leaders Lab is building the right team. Before you scale, before you sell, before any big initiative, you need the right leaders around you. Our team has placed over 1,000 executives into Fortune 500 and fast-growing startups and supported over 75 acquisitions along the way, helping leaders create over $1 billion in enterprise value. At the Leaders Lab, we help you hire top talent, scale with confidence, and build a business or team that can thrive without you. Take the free Scale Up scorecard at theleaderslab.co or email me directly, ken@theleaderslab.co, to find out how ready your organization really is for growth. And now, back to the playbook.
I completely agree with you, Ken. And something you often talk about as well is taking ownership of things. And
Totally.
you're quite explicit about the pillars of honesty, ownership, and professionalism. And I think for most people, you'd assume that these are just things that are just no thing. Like, of course, you need to be honest and have ownership and professionalism. Why is it important to spell those out regardless?
Because I think, like anything else, when, it's funny, like we're recording this in January of 26, and so a lot of people have written down their resolutions or their goals
Right.
for 2026. And why do we write those things down? Why can't we just think about them? And it's because there's something in the way that we're wired that when we commit to something, when we write it down, when we state it, when we say this is what we're about, then now it's a standard. Now it's not just a thought. Because I think if you, like you said, if you ask anybody in the world, like, hey, we run by these traits and how do you feel about this? They'd say, of course, I'm an honest person, I'm a loyal person. But if it's we insist on everybody being honest, then maybe that little white lie, maybe that small thing that maybe you're clocking out at 4:50 but saying you were working till 5, maybe that becomes like a little more in the front of your brain of, not that we have people clocking in and out, but you get my point. You're not gonna, in golf they call it a mulligan. A mulligan is when you muff a shot and then you just decide to take another shot instead of counting the bad shot, right? So we don't really want to take mulligans. It's okay to make mistakes and we want to own those mistakes. So that's where honesty comes in.
Yeah.
Loyalty, same thing. If you, that goes back to the loving your place of work and where you're at with it. And if you can't, then figure out how you can, or make a decision to go do something else, which is perfectly okay. Like, not everybody is aligned or designed for all culture. We talk about some of the other traits, meticulous housekeeping. So what does that mean? A lot of us are working in a virtual world. So what does that mean? Housekeeping to me is as much as it is about your physical space as it is your digital space. Having 150 unanswered emails and 900 emails in your inbox and a calendar that's just all over the place and a million documents on your desktop, that to me is as bad as me having clothes laying on the floor of my home office. Or it's funny. I remember I had an accountant once, Onika, and this is a long time ago, but I fired him because of this. He wasn't doing a great job anyway. And then I had never been to his office and I went to visit him at his office. And first of all, this is before casual Friday became like casual every day at work. So people,
Yeah.
particularly in professional roles like lawyers and accountants and doctors, they dressed up, and
Yeah.
he wasn't. He was wearing like a t-shirt and jeans. So what, I can live with that part. But it was the other part of it, which was there were files all over this person's desk, all over. There had to have been like 150 file folders.
Oh,
And
wow.
so for me, it's like you're managing like the most important documents of my business. And I do not believe that your system works. Do you know what I mean? I don't believe that you are dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And I was already seeing evidence of that, which is why I came to his office, right? So to me, housekeeping, the way we show up is really important. I talk about over the top professionalism in our actions and in our appearance. And it's funny because on Zoom, that's one thing, right? It can be a little bit more casual. in person on a bigger meeting. I think showing up in the way that you want your great company to be represented. You've done so much to build this culture. I think about it even in sports. What's that team? I know you're familiar with a rugby team from New Zealand, the
Oh,
All
the All
Blacks.
Black.
The
Yeah.
All Blacks. See, they've established the All Blacks in their culture that they show up a certain way. Do you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
impactful. Like the first time I saw it, I think I got goosebumps, right? And companies can do the same thing just with like their level of professionalism, or if they're more of a creative
Mhm.
company, their level of fun or energy or whatever it is, however they want to express themselves. But I think that's like really important. I'll give you a couple more. We don't need to go through all of them. Taking the blame, giving the credit. There are leaders that, and I think this comes from radical self doubt when you need to take the credit for someone else. When you're confident, you, at a minimum, share the credit. And when you
Mhm.
can, you give the credit. I try to just do it accurately. I'm not going to say someone did this when they didn't do it, right? But if
Yeah.
they participated in something, I want to make sure they get that recognition. If they led something or if they were the main driver in something, then I want to give all of that credit to them. If something goes
Mhm.
wrong in the company, that new hire didn't work out or whatever, again, the buck stops with me. I've got to own that. I don't like excuses or defending things that didn't go well.
Yeah.
So, especially when you're trying to coach someone and the response is, yeah, but blah, 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 and they want to tell you about why it didn't go well. If there's something valid to be said, if there's something important to the conversation, then fine. But if they're just trying to defend a position that like didn't work, then they're just like wasting everybody's time and they're putting up a barrier to being heard. Do you know what or to being in student mode? Being in student mode is really important for all of us. And so if I can go to someone and go, hey, this didn't go the way either one of us expected, it happens.
Yeah.
And if they're like, I know, if they actually came to me and said, what do you think we could do differently? I'm like, great, student mode, we can move forward. If they're just trying
Oh
to
my God.
defend the way that they did things, then we have a problem. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
and we all do it. It's a business maturity thing, but hopefully we grow out of it as we mature in a business environment. But the immediate thing could be like, no, I get it. There are a couple of things we should know. Now, if it's like, hey, this didn't work because we didn't have this resource, not as an excuse, but we needed this resource and we didn't have it.
Yeah.
That comes along the lines of, hey, I know we can do better. I'm anxious to hear your feedback. And then I've got a couple of things that we might need to do better next time. Like that, framed that
Yeah.
way, that still works.
Yeah, absolutely can. One of the cornerstones of a good culture is obviously respect, and specifically around the idea that there's no hierarchy of human value. How does the respect aspect of culture shape the way a team interacts over time, especially when you're looking at it from the leader's perspective?
I think maybe because I grew up without a silver spoon, no college, I always felt like I was in these environments where I was trying to prove myself or maybe felt a little bit of imposter syndrome and didn't quite feel elevated sometimes to the people in the room that I should be in. And so I always wanted that. Like, why can't someone just see me for who I am? And so I always wanted
Yeah.
that myself. And so it's a very important value to me. And I'll tell you a quick story. Right after I became a director in corporate, I went to a big regional meeting, huge meeting. And I think at the time, if I wasn't the youngest director in the company, I was one of the youngest for sure. And I was the age of most of our sales reps, and this was a sales meeting for the entire West Coast, and it was across all the divisions in the company. Again, not that it matters. I don't know what the difference in look would be, but I think because of age and all of that, I probably just looked like every other male sales rep that was out there. And I remember someone that knew who I was and what my position was grabbed me and said, oh, I want you to meet our VP over this division. And I was like, oh, okay, great. So this would have been my counterpart, a little more senior to me, but my counterpart in terms of job scope from another division. And when they walked me up, I forgot exactly what he said, but it was obvious that he thought I was someone he didn't need to spend any time with. and he completely blew me off. It was like, I don't have time for this right now, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't even nice to meet you. It was, and so to me, that's how he treats sales reps. That's how that leader
Yeah.
treats sales reps. Because that's what he thought. I don't get offended by him thinking, who cares? He doesn't know who I am. He could think I'm a sales rep, a janitor. It doesn't matter. That's not the part that bothered me. The part that bothered me is this is how this person treats sales reps. And the proof of that was after the meeting, after he had heard me speak, after he understood who I was, because he came rushing up to
Oh,
grovel and apologize, which made it worse to me. I was like, if you're going to be an asshole, at least be an asshole across all the pay bands. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Just be like, no, I'm just a, that's just how I act. It actually made it stick in a bad way for me even more. And I value people on how they show up and what they're doing, not in their job description or their pay band. So
Mhm.
someone can be a brand new hire in your warehouse throwing boxes, but they're showing up to work with a great attitude every day. They're fun to work with. They do their job well. That person is a cog in this machine, and a really good cog in this machine that's creating positivity around them and doing great work. And if anything, that's a tougher job than some of these office jobs. And it's almost like I want to go out of my way to make sure that person knows that they're recognized and appreciated. You know what I mean? And again, because I feel like I've been that guy, and you feel
Yeah.
like no one knows who you are, no one's like seeing the work that you're doing. So I think it's really important.
Yeah. It's really important, Ken. I'd go as far as to say it's probably on an interpersonal perspective in the culture, the most important.
Yeah,
If you don't have that, and it doesn't matter which way it goes, like upwards in the hierarchy, downwards, laterally, if you don't have that, you minimize your chances of success. If I don't treat my peer with respect when I need assistance with something, they're just going to be like, no, I'm not going to help you. Why would I help you?
agreed. And this is one of those things going back to we don't walk by cultural issues. If I saw a peer or another person on the team treating someone with a lack of respect, that's one of those operational
Mhm.
issues we don't walk by. I would immediately grab that person and just be, because if you don't nip that kind of stuff in the bud when it happens, then it's going to
Yeah.
continue to happen. People will, they just assume that things left unsaid are okay to, do you know what I mean? That unchecked, that it's okay to do that. You're also, your thought is spot on, not just because I think so, but from a data perspective. If you look at the reasons, we could look it up right now. I might do it real quick just for the podcast. But if you look at the top reasons that people leave their jobs, most people would say it's money, right?
Yeah.
Let's
Leadership,
tip
manage.
in. It's lack of being appreciated. I'll give it to you an exact framework that it tells me, but it's usually near the top is a lack of appreciation, lack of being under, yeah, there it is. Lack of trust or respect. Poor leadership, by far the number one reason. Under that, lack of trust or respect, micromanagement or absentee. So, leader not inconsistent expectations. So, exactly what we talked about earlier, people not
Yeah.
knowing what's expected, and no feedback or recognition. And then the second one is growth and career path, and it goes on from there. Compensation is down a ways. Now, what's
You
funny,
wouldn't think that, right? That's the one most people would assume is at the top.
do you know why it's listed sometimes as the number one thing? Is because you don't have to hurt anyone's feelings to say I'm leaving because of money. You know what I mean? All the stuff at the top is I'm leaving because of you, or
Yeah.
I'm leaving because you led poorly, or there's no opportunity here, or whatever. If you say, look, I just got a better offer and it's 20% more and I couldn't turn it down, I don't have to say you're a bad leader. And the leader
Yeah.
that's a bad leader is really willing to accept that answer because they're like, oh, it's money. It's not me.
Yeah.
What could I do? And then they're also not looking in the mirror going, because again, going back to turnovers, always the boss's fault. They're probably not taking the blame for that turnover either. So they're going, there's nothing I can do. We're not competitive with salaries in the market. That's why that person left. And it's no, what happened was that person may have felt underappreciated, underutilized. That may have caused them to get their resume out, which they may or may not have gotten more money. I don't know, but let's just assume they did. It's almost like if you're married and you were in a happy marriage, why would your spouse be looking for something else all the time? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Sometimes employees get poached and it happens. But if it's happening a lot, you got to look in, and I don't care if they're all saying it's salary. You got to go, okay, it's still a leadership thing. Why aren't we addressing our salary band? Why are we walking
Exactly.
by operational problems?
Exactly. Yeah. Ken, something you often say is lead for growth and manage for profit. How do those two ideas work together without being in conflict with one another?
It's almost like outward and inward in a way. And don't get me wrong, because everybody in the company needs to be a part of both the growth and having like a cost effective or Spartan kind of attitude around expenses. But if when companies, and you see it a lot with public companies where they ebb and flow with this in, I shouldn't even say ebb and flow, they swing wildly with this, where it's we're growing, oh my God, we're not making enough money, stop growing, cut the sales force. And now everybody like don't spend too much money on office supplies. That's a problem.
Yeah.
I think again, and someone can look at their company and say, we're at this level that we're just trying to maintain where we're at. We're not really trying to grow. And that's okay. So you may adjust this a little bit for your own needs. But for our team, if there's no top line growth, then there's no job growth. If there's no job growth, then they can't have like big careers. So I really got to lead them around. Here's how we're going to drive it. And then we're going to manage, right? We're going to manage. So we're going to drive for growth and we're going to manage to make as much money as we can with that growth by not having more people on the team than we need, not recklessly spending money, et cetera, et cetera. So it's more of a function of, I see growth as more of a function of leadership, and profit, you could argue, is a bit of a leadership function. But again, it's managing. There's no profit to manage if you don't have growth, if you don't have sales.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the backbone of the business. And Ken, you often mention you don't measure success just by numbers, you also measure it by people. And this is a mistake I think a lot of leaders make. Walk me through that and also what that means for you as a leader today.
I think we fast forward to someone's retirement age and they're sitting around reflecting back on their career or talking with a friend about their career, no one's going to remember that, oh, in the first quarter of 2026, we increased EBITDA and we raised sales by 8% and our churn rate went down from all of that is just, it's important. They are measurements. They're not really
Mhm.
accomplishments, like long term. They're not really accomplishments. If you build a team of people that you respect and love that are doing bigger and bigger things with their careers, hopefully with you, but sometimes even without. Maybe you were a launching pad for them. But that's what you'll remember. You'll remember the people that you pulled out of college and gave a start to, and they are doing extremely big things either with you or with someone else. You'll remember that. You'll always remember that because those are relationships. I had a lot of accomplishments, Onika, in my corporate career. If you went back and said, hey, how about that double digit growth and 27% profit that you made in 2002? I'll be like, did I? Like, it was important at the time, but hey, do you remember this kid that you picked up off his college campus, gave a shot to, and now he's a senior VP at a Fortune 500 company? Oh, yeah, I'll always remember that person. Do you know what I mean? Always, till the day I die. And
Yeah.
so I think it's really important that to remember that the numbers that we're trying to achieve and everything, they are short term. They're not something to hang our hat on. They're important because they are the things that, if we're publicly traded, get the stock price to go up. If we're private, they increase our profits and give us the fuel that we need, the cash that we need to grow the business. But they're, if we're in love with those things more than we are with the people on our team, then we're out of balance. And that's going to show. Again, it's going to show that people go, all he cares about is numbers. I'm just a number. And maybe
Mhm.
I'll go start shopping around looking for something else. And then they come back and go, oh, someone's willing to pay me more. I'm out of here. Because again, the main reason was they were never really respected to begin with.
Yeah. Wow. Ken, this has been an incredible masterclass in intentional leadership.
Cool.
Any closing advice, remarks for a leader looking to build out their very own leadership style list?
I would say create your own leadership style. So take the things from here that resonated. And if you have some other things that resonate with you, put your leadership style down in writing. It doesn't take that long to do, and it's so impactful. And start using it when you're interviewing people and when you're talking to your direct reports. And you can modify it over time as things change. If you want a copy of what I just went through so that you can use it as a baseline, just email me, ken@theleaderslab.co, and I'll just send you a copy of it, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can adopt it, modify it, whatever. But I would start there. Like if there's some things here that really resonated with you, I'll use an old Tony Robbins quote, is never leave the scene of a decision without taking action. So take some action. If you're like, oh, we should be doing that, then take some action, right? Do something to make sure that gets implemented. But thanks, Onika. Great questions today. That's it for this episode of The Playbook by The Leaders Lab. Thanks for spending some time with us. We'd love it if you would subscribe, share the show, and leave a quick rating and review. Your feedback helps us grow, and it helps more leaders and founders join the conversation. If you'd like to talk more about hiring, scaling, or selling your business, please email me, ken@theleaderslab.co, or connect with me on LinkedIn. We'll be back soon with more strategies you can put to work today. I'm Ken Eslick with Onika. Thanks for joining us. Join us again next week in The Playbook.